The three laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws.
Elijah Bailey had just decided to relight his pipe. The door of his office opened without a preliminary knock or announcement of any kind. Bailey looked up in pronounced annoyance and then dropped his pipe. It said a good deal for the state of his mind that he left it lie where it had fallen. R. Daniel Oliver, said, kind of a mystified excitement. Jehoshaphat, it is you, isn't it?
You are quite right, said the tall bronze newcomer, his even features never flickering for a moment out of their accustomed calm. I regret surprising you by entering without warning, but the situation is a delicate one, and there must be as little involvement as possible on the part of these men and robots even in this place. I am, in any case, pleased to see you again, friend Elijah.
And the robot held out his right hand in a gesture as thoroughly human as was his appearance. It was Bailey who was so unmanned by his astonishment as to stare at the hand with a momentary lack of understanding. But then he seized it in both of his, feeling its warm firmness. But Daniel, why? You're welcome any time, but what in this situation that is such a delicate one? Are we in trouble again? Earth, I mean, Earth.
No, friend Elijah, it does not concern Earth. The situation to which I refer as a delicate one is, to outward appearances, a small thing, a dispute between mathematicians, nothing more, as we happen, quite by accident, to be within an easy jump of Earth.
This dispute took place on a starship, then?
Yes, indeed, a small dispute, yet to the humans involved, astonishing large.
Bailey could not help but smile. I'm not surprised you find humans astonishing. They do not obey the three laws.
That is indeed a shortcoming, said R. Daniel gravely, and I think humans themselves are puzzled by humans. It may be that you are less puzzled than are the men of other worlds, because so many more human beings live on Earth than on the spacer worlds. If so, and I believe it is so, you could help us. R. Daniel paused momentarily, and then said, perhaps a shade too quickly, and yet there are rules of human behavior which I have learned. It would seem, for instance, that I am deficient in etiquette, by human standards, not to have asked after your wife and child.
Oh, they are doing well. The boy is in college, and Jesse is involved in local politics. The amenities are taken care of. Now, tell me why you have come here.
As I said, we were within an easy jump of Earth, said R. Daniel, so I suggested to the captain that we consult you.
And the captain agreed. Bailey had a sudden picture of the proud and autocratic captain of a spacer starship consenting to making a landing on Earth, of all worlds, and consult an Earthman of all people.
I believe, said R. Daniel, that he was in a position where he would have agreed to anything. In addition, I praised you quite highly, although to be sure, I stated only the truth. Finally, I agreed to conduct all negotiations so that none of the crew or passengers would need to enter any of the Earthman cities.
And to talk to any Earthman, yes. Still, what has happened?
The passengers of the starship, Etta Karina, included two mathematicians who were traveling to Aurora to attend an interstellar conference on neurobiophysics. It is about these mathematicians, Alfred Barr Humboldt and Geneo Sabat, that the dispute centers. Have you perhaps, friend Elijah, heard of one or both of them?
Neither one, said Bailey firmly. I know nothing about mathematics. Look, Daniel, surely you haven't told anyone I'm a mathematics buff or anything of that.
Not at all, friend Elijah. I know you are not, nor does it matter, since the exact nature of the mathematics involved is in no way relevant to the point at issue.
Well, then go on.
Since you do not know either man, friend Elijah, let me tell you that Dr. Humboldt is well into his 27th decade. Pardon me, friend Elijah.
Nothing, 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 said Bailey irritably. He had merely muttered to himself, more or less incoherently, in a natural reaction to the extended lifespans of the spacers. Uh, and he's still active, despite his age. Hmm. On Earth, mathematicians after 30 or so, well,
Daniel said calmly. Dr. Humboldt is one of the top three mathematicians by long established repute in the galaxy. Certainly he is still active, Dr. Sabat. On the other hand, is quite young, not yet 50, but he has already established himself as the most remarkable new talent in the most abstruse branches of mathematics.
they're both great, then, said Bailey. He remembered his pipe and picked it up. He decided there was no point in lighting it and knocked out the dottle. What happened? Is this a murder case? Did one of them apparently kill the other?
Of these two men of great reputation, one is trying to destroy that of the other. By human values, I believe this may be regarded as worse than physical murder.
Sometimes, I suppose. Okay, which one is trying to destroy the other?
Why, that, friend Elijah, is precisely the point at issue. Which,
Go on.
Dr. Humboldt tells the story clearly. Shortly before he boarded the starship, he had an insight into a possible method for analyzing neural pathways from changes in microwave absorption patterns of local cortical areas. The insight was a purely mathematical technique of extraordinary subtlety, but I cannot, of course, either understand or sensibly transmit the details. These do not, however, matter. Dr. Humboldt considered the matter and was more convinced each hour that he had something revolutionary on hand, something that would dwarf all his previous accomplishments in mathematics. Then he discovered that Dr. Sabat was on board.
Ah, and I suppose he tried it out on young Sabat.
Exactly. The two had met at a professional meeting before and knew each other thoroughly by reputation. Humboldt went into it with Sabat in great detail. Sabat backed Humboldt's analysis completely and was unstinting in his praise of the importance of the discovery and of the ingenuity of the discoverer. Heartened and reassured by this, Humboldt prepared a paper outlining, in summary, his work, and 2 days later prepared to have it forwarded subreptically to the co-chairman of the conference at Aurora, in order that he might officially establish his priority and arrange for a possible discussion before the sessions were closed. To his surprise, he found that Sabat was ready with a paper of his own, essentially the same as Humboldt's, and Sabat was also prepared to have it subauthorized to Aurora.
And I suppose Humboldt was furious.
Quite.
And Sabat, what was his story?
Precisely the same as Humboldt's, word for word.
Then, just what is the problem?
Except for the mirror image exchange of names, according to Sabat, it was he who had the insight, and he who consulted Humboldt. It was Humboldt who agreed with the analysis and praised it.
Oh, and then each one claims the idea is his, that the other stole it. It doesn't sound like a problem to me at all. In matters of scholarship, it would only seem necessary to produce the records of research dated and initialed. Judgment as to priority can be made from that. Even, even if one is falsified, that might be discovered through internal inconsistencies.
Ordinarily, friend Elijah, you would be right, but this is mathematics, and not an experimental science. Dr. Humboldt claims to have worked out the essentials in his head. Nothing was put in writing until the paper itself was prepared. Dr. Sabat, of course, says precisely the same.
Subject one to a psychic probe and find out which of the two is lying.
R. Daniel shook his head slowly. Friend Elijah, you do not understand these men. They are both of rank and scholarship, fellows of the Imperial Academy. As such, they cannot be subjected to trial of professional conduct except by a jury of their peers, their professional peers, unless they personally and voluntarily waive that right.
Put it to them, then. Guilty man won't waive the right because he can't afford to face the psychic probe. This man will waive it at once. You won't even have to use the probe.
It does not work that way, friend Elijah. To waive the right in such a case, to be investigated by laymen, is a serious and perhaps irrevocable blow to prestige. Both men steadfastly refuse to waive the right to special trial as a matter of pride. The question of guilt or innocence is quite subsidiary.
In that case, let it go for now. Put the matter in cold storage until you get to Aurora. At the Neurobiophysical Conference, there'll be a huge supply of professional peers, and then one of them.
That would mean a tremendous blow to science itself, friend Elijah. Both men would suffer for having been the instrument of scandal. Even the innocent one would be blamed for having been party to a situation so distasteful. It would be felt that it should have been settled quietly out of court at all costs.
All right, I am not a spacer, but I'll try to imagine that this attitude makes sense. What do the men in question have to say?
Humboldt agrees thoroughly. He says that if Sabat will admit theft of the idea and allow Humboldt to proceed with transmission of the paper, or at least its delivery at the conference, he will not press charges. Sabat's misdeed will remain secret with him, and of course with the captain, who is the only other human to be party to the dispute.
Young Sabat will not agree, will he?
On the contrary, he agreed with Dr. Humboldt to the last detail, with the reversal of names. Still, the mirror image.
So they just sit there, stalemated.
Each, I believe, friend Elijah, is waiting for the other to give in and admit guilt.
Well then, wait. Just wait.
The captain has decided this cannot be done. There are two alternatives to waiting, you see. The first is that both remain stubborn, so that when the starship lands on Aurora, the intellectual scandal will break. The captain, who is responsible for justice on board ship, will suffer disgrace for not having been able to settle the matter quietly, and that, to him, is quite insupportable.
And the second alternative.
Is that one or the other of the mathematicians will indeed admit to wrongdoing, but will the one who confesses do so out of actual guilt or out of a noble desire to prevent the scandal? Would it be right to deprive of credit one who is sufficiently ethical to prefer to lose that credit than to see science as a whole suffer? Or else the guilty party will confess at the last moment, and in such a way as to make it appear he does so only for the sake of science, thus escaping the disgrace of his deed, and casting its shadow upon the other. The captain will be the only man to know all this. He does not wish to spend the rest of his life wondering whether he has been a party to a grotesque miscarriage of justice.
A game of intellectual chicken. Who'll break first? As Aurora comes nearer and nearer. Is that the whole story now, Daniel?
Not quite. There are witnesses to the transaction.
Jehoshaphat, why didn't you say it once? What witnesses?
Dr. Humboldt's personal servant,
A robot, I suppose. Of course it would be a robot.
yes, certainly. He is called R. Preston. This servant, R. Preston, was present during the initial conference, and he bears out Dr. Humboldt in every detail.
You mean he says that the idea was Dr. Humboldt's to begin with. Later, Dr. Humboldt detailed it to Dr. Sabat, and then Dr. Sabat praised the idea, and so on and so forth.
Yes, in full detail.
I see. Does that settle the matter or not? Presumably not.
You are quite right. It does not settle the matter, for there is a second witness. Dr. Sabat also has a personal servant, R. Ida, another robot of, as it appears, the same model as R. Preston, made, I believe, in the same year in the same factory. Both have been in service equal times.
An odd coincidence. Very odd.
A fact, I am afraid, and it does make it difficult to arrive at any judgment based on obvious differences between the two servants.
Then Ida, however, tells the same story as R. Preston.
Precisely the same story, except for the mirror image reversal of the names.
Ida stated that then young Sabat, not the one yet 50, Elijah barely did not entirely keep the sardonic note out of his voice. He himself was not yet 50, and he felt far from young. Had the idea to begin with that he detailed it to Dr. Humboldt, who was loud in his praises, and so on and so forth.
Yes, friend Elijah.
And one robot would be lying then.
So it would seem.
Well, should be easy to tell which. I imagine even a superficial examination by a good roboticist should be able to handle.
A roboticist is not enough in this case, friend Elijah. Only a qualified robopsychologist would carry weight enough and experience enough to make a decision in a case of this importance. There is no one so qualified on board ship. Such an examination can be performed only when we reach Aurora.
And by then, the crud hits the fan. Well, you're here on Earth. We can scare up a robo-psychologist, and surely anything that happens on Earth will never reach the ears of Aurora, and there'll be no scandal.
Except that neither Dr. Humboldt nor Dr. Sabat will allow his servant to be investigated by a robo-psychologist of Earth. The Earthmen would have to. He paused.
Elijah barely said stolidly. He'd have to touch the robot. Spacers.
These are old servants. Well thought of.
And not to be solely the touch of Earthmen. Then what do you want me to do, damn it? He paused, grimacing. I'm sorry, R. Daniel, but I see no reason for having involved me.
I was on a ship on a mission utterly irrelevant to the problem at hand. The captain turned to me because he had to turn to someone. I seemed human enough to talk to, and robot enough to be a safe recipient of confidence. He told me the whole story and asked what I would do. I realized the next jump would take us as easily to Earth as to our target. I told the captain that, although I was as much at a loss to resolve the mirror image as he was, there was on Earth one who might help.
Jehoshaphat, muttered Bailey under his breath.
Consider, friend Elijah, that if you succeed in solving this puzzle, it would do your career good, and Earth itself might benefit. The matter could not be publicized, of course, but the captain is a man of some influence on his home world, and he would be grateful.
You just put a greater strain on me.
I have every confidence, said Ardenil stolidly, that you already have some idea as to what procedure ought to be followed.
Do you? I suppose that the obvious procedure is to interview the two mathematicians, one of which who would seem to be a thief.
I'm afraid, friend Elijah, that neither one will come into the city, nor would either one be willing to have you come to them.
Oh, of course, and there's no way, none, of forcing a spacer to allow contact with an Earthman. No, no matter what the emergency. Yes, I understand that, Daniel, but I was thinking interview by closed circuit television.
Nor that. They will not submit to interrogation by an Earthman.
And what do they want of me? Can I speak to the robots?
They would not allow the robots to come here either.
Jehoshaphat, Daniel, Jehoshaphat, you've come.
That was my own decision. I have permission, while on board ship, to make decisions of that sort without veto by any human being but the captain himself, and he was eager to establish the contact. I, having known you, decided that television contact was insufficient. I wished to shake your hand.
Elijah Bailey softened. I, I appreciate that, Daniel, but I still I still honestly wish you could have refrained from thinking of me at all in this case. Can I talk to the robots by television at least?
That, I think, can be arranged.
Thank Jehoshaphat. Oh, something at least. That means I would be doing the work of a robo-psychologist in a crude sort of way.
But you are a detective, friend Elijah, not a robo-psychologist.
Well, we'll let it pass. Now, before I see them, let's think a bit. Tell me, is it possible that both robots are telling the truth? Perhaps the conversation between the two mathematicians was equivocal. Perhaps it was such a nature that each robot could honestly believe its own master was proprietor of the idea. Or perhaps one robot only heard one portion of the discussion and the other another portion, so that each could suppose its own master was proprietor of the idea.
That is quite impossible, friend Elijah. Both robots repeat the conversation in identical fashion, and the two repetitions are fundamentally inconsistent.
Then is it absolutely, absolutely certain that one of the robots is lying?
Yes,
Will I be able to see the transcript of all evidence given so far in the presence of the captain, if I should want to?
I thought you would ask that, and I have brought copies with me.
Jehoshaphat, another blessing. A blessing. Ah, day is turning out great. The robot's been cross examined at all. Is that cross examination included in the transcript?
The robots have merely repeated their tales. Cross examination would be conducted only by robopsychologists.
Or by myself?
You are a detective, friend Elijah, not a.
Yes, I'm a detective. All right, our Daniel, yes. I'll try to get the space of psychology straight. A detective can do it because he isn't a robopsychologist. Let's think further. Ordinarily, a robot will not lie, but he will do so if necessary to maintain the three laws. He might lie to protect, in legitimate fashion, his own existence in accordance with the third law. He is more apt to lie if that is necessary to follow a legitimate order given him by a human being in accordance with the second law. He is most apt to lie if that is necessary to save a human life, or to prevent harm from coming to a human in accordance with the first law, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And in this case, each robot would be defending the professional reputation of his master and would lie if it was necessary to do so. Under the circumstances, the professional reputation would be nearly equivalent to life, and there might be a near first law urgency to the lie.
Yet by the lie, each servant would be harming the professional reputation of the other's master, friend Elijah.
So it would, but each robot might have a clearer conception of the value of its own master's reputation, and honestly judge it to be greater than that of the others. The lesser harm would be done by the lie, he would suppose, than by the truth. Having said that, Elijah barely remained quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Hmm, all right. Then can you arrange to have me talk to one of the robots? Uh, to Ida, whatever first, I think."
Dr. Sabat's robot?
Yes, said Bailey dryly. The young fellow's robot.
It will take me but a few minutes, said Ardenil. I have a micro receiver outfitted with a projector. I will need merely a blank wall, and I think this one will do if you will allow me to move some of these film cabinets.
Go ahead. We'll have to talk into a microphone of some sort.
No, you will be able to talk in an ordinary manner. Please pardon me, friend Elijah, for a moment of further delay. I will have to contact the ship and arrange for our Ida to be interviewed.
If that will take some time, Danielle, how about giving me the transcripted material of the evidence so far?
The minutes passed, and Ardenil said, "If you are ready, friend Elijah, or would you prefer a few more minutes with the transcript?"
No, I'm not learning anything new. Put him on.
Our Ida, unreal in two-dimensional projection against the wall, was basically metallic in structure, not at all the humanoid creature that Ardenil was. His body was tall but blocky, and there was very little to distinguish him from the many robots Bailey had seen, except for minor structural details.
Greetings, our Ida.
"Greetings, sir," said Ar-Ida in a muted voice that sounded surprisingly humanoid.
You are the personal servant of Janano, Mr. Sabat, are you not?
"I am, sir."
For how long, boy?
"For 22 years, sir."
And your master's reputation is valuable to you?
"Yes, sir, it is."
Would you consider it of importance to protect that reputation?
"Yes, sir."
As important to protect his reputation as his physical life?
"No, sir."
As important to protect his reputation as the reputation of another?
Ar-Ida hesitated. He said, "Such cases must be decided on their individual merits, sir. There is no way of establishing a general rule."
Paley hesitated. The spacer robot spoke more smoothly and intellectually than Earth models did. He was not at all sure he could outthink one. If you decided that reputation of your master were more important than that of another, say that of Alfred Barr Humboldt, would you would you lie to protect your master's reputation?
"I would, sir."
Did you lie in your testimony concerning your master and his controversy with Dr. Humboldt?
"No, sir, I did not."
Hypothetically, if you were lying, would you deny you're lying and protect that lie? Wouldn't you?
"Yes, sir."
Well, then, hmm, let's consider this. Your master, Giano Savant, is a young man of great reputation in mathematics, but he is a young man. If in this controversy with Dr. Humboldt, he had succumbed to temptation and acted unethically, heaven forbid, he would suffer a certain eclipse of reputation. But he is young and would have ample time to recover. He would have many intellectual triumphs ahead of him, and men would eventually look upon his plagiaristic attempt as the mistake of a hot blooded youth, deficient in judgment. It would be something that would be made up for in the future. However, if, on the other hand, it were Dr. Humboldt who succumbed to temptation, the matter would be much more serious. He is an old man whose great deeds have spread over centuries. His reputation has been unblemished. All of that, however, would be forgotten in the light of this one crime of his later years, and he had no opportunity to make up for it in the comparative short time remaining to him. There'd be little more that he could accomplish. There'd be so many more years of work ruined in Humboldt's case than that of your master, and so much less opportunity to win back his position. You understand, don't you, that a Humboldt faces this a worse situation.
There was a long pause, and Ida said, with unmoved voice, "My evidence was a lie. It was Dr. Humboldt whose work it was, and my master has attempted, wrongfully, to appropriate the credit."
Ah, very well, boy. You are instructed to say nothing to anyone about this until given permission by the captain of the ship. You're excused. The screen blanked out, and Bailey popped at his pipe. Do you suppose the captain heard that, Danielle?
"I am sure of it. He is the only witness, except for us."
Good. Now for the other.
"But is there any point to that, friend Elijah, in view of what our Ida has confessed?"
Of course there is. Our Ida's confession means nothing.
"Nothing."
Nothing at all. I point out that Dr. Humboldt's position was the worst. Naturally, if he were lying to protect Sabbath, he would switch to the truth as in fact claimed to have done. On the other hand, if he were telling the truth, he'd switch to a lie to protect Humboldt. It's still a mirror image, and we haven't gained anything.
"But then what will we gain by questioning R. Preston?"
Nothing, if the mirror image were perfect. But it is not. After all, one of the robots is telling the truth to begin with, and one is lying to begin with, and that's the point of asymmetry. Let me see R. Preston, and if the transcription of R. Ada's examination is done, let me have it.
The projector came into use again. R. Preston stared out of it, identical with R. Ida in every respect, except for some trivial chest design.
Greetings, R. Preston. Kept the record of R. Ada's examination before him as he spoke.
"Greetings, sir," said R. Preston. His voice was identical with that of R. Ida.
You are the personal servant of Alfred Barr Humboldt, are you not?
"I am, sir."
For how long, boy?
"For 22 years, sir."
And your master's reputation is valuable to you?
"Yes, sir."
Would you consider of importance to protect that reputation?
"Yes, sir."
As important to protect his reputation as his physical life?
"No, sir."
As important to protect his reputation as the reputation of another?
R. Preston hesitated. He said, "Such cases must be decided on their individual merits, sir. There is no way of establishing a general rule."
Of course, of course. If you decided the reputation of your master were more important than that of another, say that of Giano Sabat, would you lie to protect your master's reputation?
"I would, sir."
Did you lie in your testimony concerning your master and his controversy with Dr. Sabat?
"No, sir, I did not."
If you were lying, you would deny you were lying in order to protect that lie, wouldn't you?
"Yes, sir, I would."
Well, then, let's consider this. Your master, Alfred Barr Humboldt, is an old man of great reputation in mathematics, but he is an old man. If, in this controversy with Dr. Sabat, he had succumbed to temptation and acted unethically, he would suffer a certain eclipse of reputation. But his great age and his centuries of accomplishments would stand against that, and he would win out. Men would look upon this plagiaristic attempt as a mistake of a perhaps sick old man, no longer certain in judgment. If, on the other hand, it were Dr. Sabat who had succumbed to temptation, the matter would be much more serious. He is a young man with a far less secure reputation. He would only have centuries ahead of him, which he might accumulate knowledge and achieve great things. This, this would be close to him. Now obscured by one mistake of his youth, he has a much longer future to lose than your master has. You see, don't you, that Sabbath faces the worst situation and deserves the greater consideration.
There was a long pause. Then R. Preston said, with an unmoved voice, "My evidence was as I—" At that point, he broke off and said nothing more.
Please continue, R. Preston.
There was no response. R. Daniel said, "I am afraid, friend Elijah, that R. Preston is in stasis. He is out of commission."
Well then, ha, we have finally produced an asymmetry. From this, we can see who the guilty person is.
"In what way, friend Elijah?"
Get out. Suppose you are a person who had committed no crime, and your personal robot were a witness to that. There'd be nothing you need to do. Your robot would tell the truth and bear you out. If, however, you were a person who had committed the crime, you'd have to depend on your robot to lie. That that would be a somewhat riskier position. While the robot would lie if necessary, the greater inclination would be to tell the truth, so that the lie would be less firm than the truth would be. A crime committing person would very likely have to order the robot to lie. In this way, first law would be straightened by second law.
"That would seem reasonable," said R. Daniel.
Suppose we have one robot of each type. One robot would switch from truth, unreinforced, to the lie, and could do so after some hesitation, without serious trouble. The other robot would switch from the lie, strongly reinforced, to the truth, but could only do so at risk of burning out various positronic trackways in its brain and falling into stasis.
"And since R. Preston went into stasis—"
R. Preston's master, Dr. Humboldt, is the man guilty of plagiarism. If you transmit this to the captain and urge him to face Dr. Humboldt with the matter at once, he may force a confession. If so, I hope you will tell me immediately.
"I will certainly do so. You will excuse me, friend Elijah. I must talk to the captain privately."
Certainly. Use the conference room. It is shielded. Bailey could not do no work of any kind in our Daniel's absence. He sat in uneasy silence. A great deal would depend on the value of his analysis. He was acutely aware of his lack of expertise in robotics. Our Daniel was back in half an hour, very nearly the longest half hour of Bailey's life. There was no use, of course, in trying to determine what had happened from the expression of the humanoid's impassive face. Bailey tried to keep his face impassive. Hmm. Yes, our Daniel.
"Precisely as you said, friend Elijah. Dr. Humboldt has confessed. He was counting, he said, on Dr. Sabat giving way and allowing Dr. Humboldt to have his one last triumph. The crisis is over, and you will find the captain grateful. He has given me permission to tell you that he admires your subtlety greatly, and I believe that I myself will achieve favor for having suggested you."
Good, said Bailey, his knees weak and his forehead moist. Now that his decision had proven correct. But Jehoshaphat, our Daniel, do not put me on the spot like that again, will you?
"I will try not to, friend Elijah. All will depend, of course, on the importance of a crisis, on your nearness, and on certain other factors. Meanwhile, I have a question."
Yes,
Was it not possible to suppose that passage from a lie to the truth was easy, while passage from the truth to a lie was difficult? And in that case, would not the robot in stasis have been going from a truth to a lie? And since R. Preston was in stasis, might one not have drawn the conclusion that it was Dr. Humboldt who was innocent and Dr. Sabat who was guilty?
Yes, R. Daniel. It was possible to argue that way. Was the other argument that proved right? Humboldt did confess, didn't he?
He did, but with arguments possible in both directions, how could you, friend Elijah, so quickly pick the correct one?
For a moment, Bailey's lips twitched, then he relaxed and they curved into a smile. Because, R. Daniel, I took into account human reactions, not robotic ones. I know more about human beings than about robots. In other words, I had an idea as to which mathematician was guilty before I ever interviewed the robots. Once I provoked an asymmetric response in them, I simply interpreted in such a way as to place the guilt on the one I believed already to be guilty. The robotic response is dramatic enough to break down the guilty man. My own analysis of human behavior might not have been sufficient to do so.
I am curious to know what your analysis of human behavior was.
Jehoshaphat, R. Daniel, think. Think, and you won't have to ask it. There's another point of asymmetry in this tale of mirror image besides the matter of true and false. There's a matter of the age of the two mathematicians. One is quite old, and one is quite young.
Yes, of course. But what then?
Why this? I can see a young man, flushed with a startling and revolutionary idea, consulting the matter of an old man whom he has, from his early student days, thought of as a demigod in the field. I cannot see an old man rich in honors and used to triumphs coming up with a sudden, startling revolutionary idea, consulting a man centuries his junior whom he is bound to think of as a young whippersnapper, or whatever term a spacer would use. Then, too, if a young man had the chance, would he try to steal the idea of a revered demigod? It would be unthinkable. On the other hand, an old man, conscious of declining powers, might well snatch at one last chance of fame and consider a baby in the field to have no rights he was bound to observe. In short, it was not conceivable that Sabat stole Humboldt's idea, and from both angles, Dr. Humboldt was guilty.
R. Daniel considered that for a long time, and he held out his hand. I must leave now, friend Elijah. It was good to see you. May we meet again soon.
Bailey gripped the robot's hand warmly. If you don't mind, R. Daniel. Not too soon.